Hey everybody, Devin Kupka here with a 5 to Go podcast bonus segment, something that we briefly touched on this latest episode of the 5 to Go podcast, but we really didn't get too much in depth into. But there's been a lot of hoopla made in the past, I'd say about day or so since the ratings got announced for the latest NASCAR Cup Series race at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and there's just been a lot of talk online about the decline of ratings, the decline of NASCAR. And specifically, what we're going to get into in this video, and I briefly mentioned it on the latest episode, was about the TV ratings and what's going to happen with TV going forward. So it was announced yesterday the New Hampshire race on USA Network only got 1.5 million viewers, which really, generally speaking, is not that many viewers for a NASCAR Cup race because most NASCAR Cup races throughout the year average, I'd say, between 2 to 4 million viewers. If it's earlier in the season, it's going to probably get closer to 4 million, and sometimes in some cases above 4 million. As the season goes on, viewership tends to dwindle a little bit with a little stiffer competition, the NFL coming in, and then you got NBA, MLB, World Series, postseason coming up as well, which is rubbing right up against the end of NASCAR season. But 1.5 million viewers for NASCAR's Cup Series race at New Hampshire on Sunday. A very low number, and a lot of people are starting to freak out on social media about this. And, well, I think you look at the number, and people are saying, oh, playoffs, all that. I think, and we'll get to that in a second, you got to look back at the TV deal NASCAR signed. It's a very cable-heavy TV contract, and there's only 9 races over the air, and I would honestly go to say there was really technically 14. I would count that with the audience that Prime has, and it beat my prediction that I made earlier in the year that they're not going to get any ratings on Prime. Well, you could say they rivaled what cable used to be. If not, it's in between what cable is now and what over the air is, and especially with the audience base that Amazon Prime has, could really lend itself in the future to really kind of being an over-the-air partner because of just how available it is. Although technically it isn't over-the-air because you need an internet, but if you need over-the-air television, you also need electricity, and a TV. But anyways, really you only have traditionally 9 over-the-air. So you had the Fox races earlier in the year, and then you have the NBC races, which there were only 5 races, I believe. 4 races on NBC this year. Last one being at Daytona. And remember, the last over-the-air race before Daytona was Talladega back in April. So all you had was cable and Prime races between that. And now we're in the stretch to where USA would normally be ending their stretch of NASCAR Cup Series races, but now they're going into the round of 8, actually, all the way to Las Vegas. We don't see an NBC race again until Talladega, and then NBC will finish the last 3 of the races out there. But we've seen the decline of cable over the past past decade or so, and NASCAR, quite frankly, not a great TV deal outside of the Prime deal. Not a great TV deal because it's so cable heavy. I know NASCAR wanted to get more revenue so it could share with the teams, but in reality, you sign a 7-year contract. Where's that going to place you in 7 years in 2032? Where's cable going to go? We see all these major networks, NBC, CBS, Paramount. Paramount just got bought out by Skydance, which there's going to be a lot of changes made there at Paramount, CBS. There's going to be a lot of changes made amongst these major television organizations, the big 4, Fox, NBC, CBS, ABC. And we see now with NBC Universal, and I mentioned this yesterday on the 5 to Go podcast, was that fact that with NBC Universal, they're now spinning off their cable division. And that won't really fully take effect until next year, but it's already happening. You can already see it on its sports properties. Take a look at NASCAR's coverage so far on NBC. If you look at it, there's no NBC Sports logos anywhere except on that desk. That doesn't seem to change because it's got the old logo still on it on their Peacock pit box. But outside of that, they're using USA mic flags, so it's completely separate coverage. And going back to New Hampshire, 1.5 million viewers is just not a lot, and you're competing against the NFL in football. And I could see NBC now is spinning this off. What's going to happen, and I put out a post the other day on X saying that NBC is going to get rid of its races on USA probably within the next 2 years because NBC Sports signed this TV contract, not USA Sports or USA Network and NBC Sports. So now that USA Network's going to be a completely separate entity from NBC now, is NBC willing to really sell off those races to USA Network to have on their channel, or is NBC going to bring them in-house? Now, I think NBC's probably going to bring them in-house because technically speaking, the deal that they have signed right now, NBC only has 4 races of the year. That's 4 out of 36. Only 4 out of 36 races throughout the year. And that's not a lot, especially for how much they're paying. So I would imagine NBC will take a majority, if not all of their races, off of cable. Now, there was talk a couple months ago about NBC potentially launching a sports cable channel, which kind of makes no sense because then it's like, well, we just disbanded that in 2021. So now it's like, well, do you really want to launch a cable sports network in this age? I don't think you really want to. So I don't think NBC will launch a sports cable channel. It would surprise me if they do, especially given the state of cable. But I think NBC is going to take their races off of cable. Now, I don't know how much of a ratings boost it's going to get over the air because the NFL is just completely, over the past since the pandemic, has exploded in viewership. Because if you really remember, the peak of the NFL was really, you could say, 2015. And the latter half of the decade in the 2010s was marred with controversy. You had the kneeling controversy and all that. And you had a lot of people start tuning out. The attendance went down for a little bit, but the pandemic really solidified the NFL. And the NFL, not that the NFL really declined all that much in the latter half of the last decade, but during the pandemic, people were together, new stars came out of the league, and now the NFL is stronger than ever, and it's way past its peak than what it was 10 years ago. So the NFL is much bigger than ever, so NASCAR's having to compete against stiffer competition and also a dwindling cable audience. 1.5 million viewers. This race 20 years ago probably gets closer to 4. Now, cable viewership in the past 10 years has dropped 50%. So cable really isn't the future, and it still boggles my mind a little bit that NASCAR signed this deal. I know they wanted to get more money, but it's so cable-oriented. I mean, we even look at the TNT Sports side of races where they did on par for what TNT Sports expects those races to do and what that program expects to do, especially when you bring into the NBA. They kind of averaged around the same viewership for normal regular season races and games. So it's just an interesting TV contract that they signed. I don't know if it's the best because where's cable going to be in 7 years? We see these major divisions already spinning it off. I talked to an executive at TNT Sports a couple months ago at Echo Park Speedway, and they said they're going to have an answer for cable because it is not a good living model going forward, so we don't know if it goes streaming or not. And by the way, the thing with NBC and USA Network, the reason why these races don't stream on Peacock, except for the NBC races, is because USA likes to keep everything separate for some odd reason. And we see it with WWE and SmackDown. You can't stream SmackDown live on Peacock. You have to wait a month until that episode is over, until you can actually watch it on demand on Peacock. So it's just it's kind of crazy. It's just kind of crazy, but I think you're going to really see a big shakeup in this TV contract with NASCAR. I think FS1 is here to stay. I don't think they go anywhere. Yeah, they're still pretty strong in sports viewership, I would say. The ratings haven't fallen that significantly yet, but I expect NBC to yank pretty much all of their USA Network races in the next probably 2 years, not only due to ratings, but also they don't own the network anymore. So that's something to watch out for. And there's a lot of talk also, and this is a whole other, separate topic, and I'm not going to get too much in depth with it, but, playoffs, there's lack of stars and all of that, and some of that's true. The racing isn't good. Some of that can be true, but I will say this. If you're using the playoffs, in my opinion, if you're using the playoffs as I think that's just a scapegoat for these low ratings, because I guarantee you, and NASCAR's actually mulling potentially bringing back a 36 full race point season next year. I guarantee you we run the same schedule, same TV schedule next year with a full point system season. I think you get the same results in viewership. I don't think you do any better. You might even do a little bit worse. I think using the playoffs is kind of a scapegoat, so I wouldn't lean too heavily on that because I don't think that really influences too many people's opinions on watching a race or not as the playoffs, but I think that's more of a scapegoat because if you just run the system next year, I think you get the same results. I don't think much changes. But yeah, there's a lot of talk about the low ratings this weekend, and I think you're still going to get low ratings over the next 3 weeks on USA Network. Just the stiff competition and the dwindling cable viewership in NASCAR, and I really say NBC Sports is going to have to change something up, and I think that's leading into the reason why I think NBC is going to drop all their races off USA Network. And NBC, really, on their sports property, they don't have a lot that they have on Sunday afternoons. They have Sunday Night Football during the fall, but NASCAR's races aren't run on Sunday nights during September through, outside of Darlington, really the rest of the season. So I think that's what we're going to see in the future. We're going to see NBC take its races off of USA Network just due to its spinning off. So I think that's something we're going to have to watch out for. And this is a quite fascinating TV deal NASCAR signed, and hopefully things will be okay by come 2032. But thank you for tuning into this little bonus segment. Make sure to check us out, 5 to Go Podcast, YouTube, and Facebook, and check out the full episode that we just posted. We break down everything New Hampshire, preview Kansas, and Randall Burnett news and all that. So, stay tuned to the 5 to Go Podcast. We got you guys all covered every week in and week out. Everything NASCAR.